I feel like there is something in the combination of my split dye and also this jumper that is channeling the energy of the burglar from The Sims. Let me know if you agree down below. I hope that you guys have had a great end to 2024 and are having a wonderful start to 2025, because we are once again at the start of a brand new year. And in terms of TBRs, because that is what I'm sharing with you today, all of the books that I hope to read in January, not a lot is going to change on my channel. However, the main theme that I'm working on or hoping to work on throughout this year is efficiency across everything in my life. Essentially, I want more time to explore other hobbies, other avenues, and so I want to kind of streamline what I'm doing to make the most of my time, because while I always get things done, I know that I can work incredibly efficiently when I have to. So this year is about making myself believe that I always have to, so that I have more time to pursue other things. So I'm working on timelines and schedules, which we're not going to be going into too much in TBRs, or this TBR especially, but there are going to be slight tweaks to the way that I do things that I will talk about as we move through this video, I guess. It's nothing too dramatic. But aside from that, my TBRs are just going to be all of my book club books that I need to read in the month, my Patreon picks, anything I have out from the library, and anything that I may be reading, obviously, for any other reason. As usual, we will not be talking about Shelf It or Scrap It in TBRs, but there are going to be tweaks made to that, which you will see implemented in the first episode of 2025. And yeah, I'm hoping to achieve a lot this year, so keep your fingers crossed for me. But in terms of what I'm going to be reading, so in December I started watching a K-drama which took all of the extra reading time that I thought that I would have at the end of December, which is kind of why I want to be more efficient, so that I can read all the books and watch all the K-drama and not have to pick like one over the other. But essentially I did not really make much of a dent in that big old TBR that I wanted to clear before the end of the year. So what I've pretty much done is just removed everything from that TBR that was not essential. It's gone. We're not even going to think about it anymore, and carried over everything that is. But I'm going to be starting off this TBR by talking about my book club books, and the first one is of course the book for Catch Up Book Club. Now, as I said in the announcement video, I am going to be reading the books in the same month as the live show, and the live show for Malice by John Gwynne is going to be on the 12th of January on my channel at 8 p.m. GMT. So this, in terms of the book club, was the book for November and December, and I am so excited to discuss this with you guys. Not that I've started it, but the amount of chatter that I've seen in the Catch Up Book Club Discord makes me think that everyone has a lot of thoughts, which is great. This is a series that I've been really wanting to get to for such a long time. I don't know very much about it, but I know that people love John Gwynne. I know that he has books that have tons of characters, he has epic plot lines, he has really emotive characters, and they're the kind of books that will like pull your heart out of your chest, which we all know are my personal favorites. And in terms of the plot, all I know is that it is following a war between humans and giants. I think it is a war that happened in the past, but I'm assuming that things are starting to resurface again in the present day. Now, if y'all are wanting to read this along with us and you don't know what Catch Up Book Club is, Catch Up Book Club is my epic fantasy book club where we read through entire series. It's full series read-alongs of adult epic fantasy, and I will put the announcement up here if you guys want to get all of the details and join in on the faith follow along before we get too far into it. This is the first book, so it's a perfect time to join. For the other epic fantasy book club that I'm currently participating in, we have Wheel of Time along. Now, I don't need to read The Gathering Storm until February, but because the books are so long and I listen to them on audio and I pace myself with them, I am probably going to be starting The Gathering Storm in the second half of the month. So this one is the 12th book in the Wheel of Time series. We are nearly there and I am so happy about it. And in this one, we are following a classic struggle between the forces of light and dark, where over ages this war has been raging and slowly over time the dark has been winning. So we are following this age's dragon reborn, who is a pivotal figure in this struggle, as he hopefully tips the world towards the light for good and banishes the dark once again. The books have picked up a little bit. Book 11 was better than books like 6 through 10, and I'm really excited to get to the end of this series because Brandon Sanderson is going to be taking over soon, and we all know he's one of my favorite authors, so I'm excited to see what he does with a series that I'm currently not loving, to see whether it does become a series I love or not. I think not. but we'll see. The book for my Patreon book club, which is the Alpha Ho book club, I don't think I'm going to even bother thinking about until February. It is Lady of Shadows by Melissa K. Roerich, which is the second book in the Lady of Darkness series. I'm pretty sure it's Lady of Shadows. This one is a fantasy romance following an assassin and a fae fire prince. Lady of Shadows is the book for January and February. So as I said, I'll probably just worry about that next month. For my other Patreon read along, the unofficial read along of the Pretty Little Liars series, I am going to be reading book 10, which is Ruthless. So this is the second era of Pretty Little Liars. I've had a few comments saying that Sarah Shepard didn't write the last half of this series. I'm pretty sure that she did. I didn't look into it too deeply, but as far as I can tell, like, Sarah Shepard wrote all of these. I know that L.J. Smith didn't write the majority of the Vampire Diaries books, so I don't know if that maybe is playing something into it, but I'm pretty sure that this is all Sarah Shepard, and it was intended to end after book 8, but it was picked up again for another 8 books, which I believe the general consensus is they're not as good. I did read book 9 recently and I still had an okay time with it, so I am at this point still continuing with this. It is a young adult mystery series following a group of girls whose friend goes missing, and a year or so after that they get back together because their friendship group has kind of dissolved to get to the bottom of a series of anonymous threatening texts that they have been receiving. This one is a fast, fun palette cleanser for me. I love a YA mystery or a YA thriller, and so I'm happy to continue reading these during my monthly Patreon 24-hour readathon, which I think is going to fall towards the end of the month in January. And then of course we have my Patreon picks, which are pretty much the essential books from my December TBR that I'm carrying over. I don't really think I'm carrying over anything else aside from library books, but we are going to talk about those in just a minute. So I currently have 3 Patreon picks that I need to read. The first one that has been here the longest is The Deer and the Dragon by Piper CJ. This one is an urban fantasy / fantasy romance that has a lot to do with Norse mythology. I am just going to gloss over these because they've been here for a while. I think that this one is my September Patreon pick though. The one for November is Daughter of the Drowned Empire by Frankie Diane Malice. This is one that I'm quite excited to get to because once again it is a fantasy romance, but I think that it seems to have a lot of complexity within the fantasy world, which I'm looking forward to. And then my December pick was Check and Mate by Ali Hazelwood. So this one is a YA contemporary romance. I do believe it falls more into the new adult category though, and it is following a chess champion and a girl who has fallen out of love with chess, and I think that she beats him at a tournament, which kind of ignites his interest in her a little bit. And then for my Patreon picks going forward, we have made a slight adjustment. So anything that is added to the jar from January 2025 is going to be from my own TBR, because one of my main goals going into this year is the same as my goal for last year, and that is to get rid of the stacks on the floor, hence shelve it or scrap it, and just to keep my TBR at a manageable level. I don't mind having a large TBR, so I'm not trying to like get rid of it or read through the entire thing or anything. I just want to make sure that I'm prioritizing the books that I own instead of unnecessarily bringing books in, because I have a lot of books to choose from. It's not like I have a small TBR for people to pick through. I've got like nearly 600 unread books. So we do have a new color for the jar for 2025 as well. So as it stands, yellow is 2021 and 2022, purple is 2023, green is 2024, and we now have a few blue ones creeping in, which are 2025. So any books that were added previously that I don't own, they still stand. I will read them when they come out. Anything going in from this point onwards is from my owned TBR, which can be referenced from the video that I just posted of my entire own TBR. If you're unfamiliar with what this is in general, the inner circle tier of my Patreon could recommend a book to go into this jar, and then every month I will pick one out and I will read it in the months that follow. As you can see, I am a little bit far behind, but I'm still trying to rectify that. I'm not even making promises anymore. I do intend to be more efficient going forward, but I always have the best intentions, and whether they manifest into reality is a completely different matter. So our first pick of 2025 is hopefully going to be one that's nice, short and sweet. It's a green one, which means it was added last year. Oh, wow, 2024. That one is Fion's pick, and it is Godkiller by Hannah Kana. Okay, this one is a good one and it is kind of short. Is it sweet? I guess we'll find out. Godkiller by Hannah Kana is the first book in a fantasy. I think it's a trilogy, I'm not sure. I know that there is definitely a third book coming out and I do already have the second, despite having not started the series, which is normally like a no from me. But I've heard amazing things about this, and when I received this in an Illumicrate, which was actually January 2023, so 2 years ago now, I was concerned because typically a big red flag for me is a short fantasy story, especially when it's an adult fantasy. However, a bunch of people whose opinions, like, I generally trust, like, we have some similar taste in fantasy, have rated this very highly. I've seen 5-star reviews for this book and I am intrigued, and that is the reason why I went in and bought the sequel to get a matching Illumicrate edition despite having not actually started this. So thank you so much to Fionn for putting this one on my TBR. Aaron actually messaged me a couple of days ago and said we need to sort out like some new buddy reads for this year, and one of the series that we kind of discussed was this one, so I guess I'm gonna be buddy reading this with Aaron. I will of course double check that she's able to read it this month, but all I really know about this one is that it's following somebody who I think their family was murdered by gods, and so since then they have been a god killer, but they encounter a god that they cannot kill, and I think that they have to go on some sort of quest with this god to achieve something. There's also a war mentioned in here as well, but it is an absolutely stunning edition. All of the editions of this book are beautiful, and I hope that it's one that I really enjoy. And then we have my library books, of which there are 2, and I am going to be doing something a little bit different with library books going forward. I love my library, and I definitely think that utilizing my library to borrow some of my anticipated releases last year instead of buying them was so beneficial to me making a reduction in my TBR. And so I love my library and I do desperately want to utilize it. However, I am not reading my library books. They're just staying on my TBR and being a little bit of a burden. The one that I still have out is The Familiar by Leigh Bardugo, but I have now returned The Warm Hands of Ghosts, and I am now no longer allowing myself to have more than one library book out aside from Wheel of Time, because Wheel of Time is something that I'm obviously reading for a book club, and I mainly only have the physical book out from the library to reference while I'm listening to the audiobook. So I'm allowed one book out and Wheel of Time. Now I currently do have 2, because this is one that I picked up. This is The September House by Carissa Orlando, which I think is a horror, and this is one that I borrowed before I decided that this is what I was going to be doing for 2025. But essentially, if it gets to the point where I have to take this back to the library, whether somebody has a hold on it or I've just renewed it so much that I have to take it to the library to show that I physically have it to be able to take it out again, then it's going back to the library and I'm not getting it out again. And what I'm going to do instead is put it on a wish list, not to buy, but to reference as a reminder of the books that I want to read that my library has, because The Familiar and The Warm Hands of Ghosts were 2 of my most anticipated reads of 2024. However, they weren't anticipated enough for me to actually read them. I have had these out of the library on and off since June and I haven't read them. So at this point, I may as well just focus on stuff that I own and leave these at the library. So this one is a historical fantasy following a girl with magical powers who is sent to the royal family. I think it's Spain, and she's sent to assist the royal family. And then this one, The September House, I'm pretty sure that this was on the Goodreads Awards, but it is a horror about a Victorian house. I have a Victorian house, so this might be interesting, that a couple buy, and they get it for what they think is a bargain price, but then they realize that it is haunted, and every September strange things happen inside. So I wanted this because it was like a bit of a change. It sounds interesting, definitely want to read it, but am I going to read it? Probably not. So like with the others, when it comes to a point where this has to go back to the library, it's going back to the library and it's not coming back out, because it's just unnecessary. Like, I don't want to read this book more than I want to read, I don't know, I've got Ninth House and Hellbent there that I own and I haven't read, so I don't need this. I don't need this book. And I do love my library and I want to use it, but I also love my TBR and I want to read it. So I'm pretty sure that that is all of the books that are currently on my January TBR. I am of course going to be filming Shelve It or Scrap It, and like I mentioned, the rules for that are also going to be adjusting a little bit. That is going to make it slightly more difficult, I guess. I still want it to be enjoyable. I still don't want it to be overwhelming, so we'll see how these rules go. But essentially a lot of my reading, as usual, is going to also be Shelve It or Scrap It, as well as this TBR. And then I also potentially have 3 mystery books that I'm going to be adding at some point, depending on how the month goes. So this is what I have to work my way through. I am not confident that I'm going to get through all of it. The library books are going to be ignored unless I have time for them, and I mean realistically I don't think I'm going to. These 2 are definites. I want to get through at least 2 of these 4, but potentially I'm planning to get through 3. We'll see. Like I said, don't want to make any promises, but as usual, it is quite an ambitious TBR, and I would like to cut that down and rectify that, if I'm being honest. So down in my comments, let me know what your first book of 2023. Damn, I mean, mentally I am still way back in like 2021, but we're not going to talk about that. Let me know what your first book of 2025 is going to be. This one is going to be the first book that I start for 2025, but I'm going to be reading it across the period of 12 days until the live show, so I think I'm actually going to end up finishing something else before that. But let me know what you intend your first read of the year to be, and if you guys would like to let me know that you were here but you don't feel like you have anything to say, leave me a house emoji for the September house, which is unfortunately I think going to be a good book that doesn't get read which is same old around here. But thank you guys so much for tuning into this video. Please don't forget to like if you liked it and subscribe if you wanna. If you head to my description box, you will find a link to my Goodreads, my Instagram and my Patreon if you would like to join me on any of those. But that is it from me today, guys. Bye.
Oh, you bite your friend like chocolate. You say you'll go where nobody knows, with guns hidden under our petticoats. We're never gonna quit it, no, we're never gonna quit it, no.